be running the laptop, but I will not be showing video once I get to the bottom of the hour. Thank you. Go ahead, Ivan.
Okay, yeah, so this paper this presentation is based on work that I am doing with a student and a professor. Uh, uh, Rahad is the student and Niamat is the professor. And I just noticed that I spelled Niamat's name wrong. Anyways, I'll correct that later. Yeah, so this presentation is on building wildfire resilience, a model of preparedness, damage, and recovery. And I just want to say, first of all, that it's independent educational and research project, and it has nothing at all to do with Project Wildfire. Well, I shouldn't say nothing at all, but it doesn't have much to do with Project Wildfire, the INCOSE initiative. So the results of the model and the results of the work are the authors' opinions. So it does not represent Project Wildfire's views or activities. Just saying that, Project Wildfire, you may know, is going on as part of the System of Systems working group. I think it's an initiative of theirs. This is a template they've developed for showing the complexity of the wildfire problem or the wildfire issue, basically showing all the different stakeholders involved and their interactions. This is tremendously complex, and I obviously don't want to try to model this in terms of system dynamics. It would be a huge effort. However, I am going to model this high-level view of Project Wildfire, which involves prevention and mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. And I think that this level of aggregation is a good level of aggregation for system dynamics modeling. So the purpose of the model is to compare preparedness investments and examine damage and recovery based on those preparedness investments, and identify delays and trade-offs that might involve the issues with preparedness and their effects on damage and recovery. So the scope of the model is that we have a 100,000 hectare landscape, 10-year monthly simulation, 10,000 initial wildlife urban interface WUI structures. Those are buildings or structures that are on the border of the wildland and the urban areas. And then we have also seasonal fire risk and 4 preparedness investment options. The model asks how preparedness funding should be allocated to strengthen long-term wildfire resilience. So it's a long-term model which is well suited for system dynamics rather than, say, a reaction model to a wildfire that is ongoing. Okay, so how wildfire damage accumulates. So the fuel load, which is basically the amount of forest and wildland that is burnable, and the weather determine the fire severity. And then the WUI development increases structural exposure. So basically, the issue is in the wildland urban interface. And then detection and suppression obviously improve containment of wildfires, and fuel treatment and managed fire can reduce the hazard. Uncontained fires add to the recovery backlog, and recovery backlog is central to how we're going to measure resilience. Okay, so wildfire resilience. So avoid withstand, recover viewpoint is avoid is to reduce the fuel loads and structural exposure, to withstand, that is to detect and contain fires effectively, and to recover, that is to clear damage before another major event. And resilience declines when damage accumulates faster than it can be cleared. Okay, so here's a high-level view of the model. I'll get into the details, which you probably won't be as interested in, but basically there's these 5 different sectors in the model. So investment builds preparedness capacity, and that's the investment allocation. And preparedness reduces hazard and exposure, and then lower damage prevents recovery, or lower damage prevents recovery backlog from accumulating. And so that's the structure of the model. And then we go into the principal model mechanisms. That basically we have the fuel sector of the model, where treatment and managed fire reduces the fuel load, and regrowth restores the fuel load over time. And then exposure is the WUI section, where the WUI growth increases the exposed structures and mitigation reduces the structural vulnerabilities. And response is detection and suppression, improved containment, and capacity takes time to develop. And recovery, damage enters the recovery backlog and recovery clears the backlog gradually. I don't know if you can tell, but this is very much system dynamics language, where you have inflows and outflows. So you can see, I'll show you that in detail in the next few slides. So basically it's a flow model. And then anyways, these mechanisms determine whether the system remains resilient or accumulates unresolved damage. So here's a flow model. You can see we have fuel load as the stock, we have regrowth as an inflow, we have fuel treatment and managed fuel reduction, managed fire fuel reduction as outflows. And we have a number of factors. For example, we have seasonal risk factors and fire severity indexes. So this is it's starting to look kind of complicated. And I guess it is, but it's definitely not as complicated as Project Wildfire. And then we have the wildland urban interface sector, and we have unmitigated WUI structures with growth in the WUI and WUI reduction, risk reduction. And then we have the suppression resources sector. So we have suppression resources, and we have response investment budget, which sets the target for suppression resources, and then we try to close the gap between the target and the actual resources over time. And those resources lead to attack success, which is the ability to respond to a fire. And also the response investment leads to a better detection and dispatch effectiveness. And finally, I guess we have backlog. We have recovery backlog sector, and we have damage additions and recovery completions. And basically, we have an ability with managed fire to reduce the damage, and we have the ability of we have structures damage that increase the damage rate, and then we have a damage addition and a recovery completion outflow, and then the recovery backlog leads to this resilience index. Okay, so now the last sector is the preparedness budget. So we assume that we're allocating a fixed preparedness budget amongst 4 competing uses. So we have fuel treatment, we have managed fire, we have suppression readiness, and we have WUI risk reduction. But increasing one allocation leaves less funding available for others. And here's the allocation process. So we have on the left-hand side, we have the preparedness budget, and then in the middle, we have the allocations, the share of the budget that's being put into the various sub-budgets, and each of these budgets are then applied to various parts of the model. So just the baseline case is with no extra budget. So if there's no additional budget for preparedness, then the resilience declines. So the WUI exposure continues to increase, the damage rises over time, and the recovery backlog approximately doubles in this model with these assumptions. And you have a substantial cumulative structural damage, and resilience index declines. And then we looked at balanced investment, where we took an investment, I think, of $10 million a year, and we applied it evenly to the four policies, or the four allocations, and we have a balanced investment that improves resilience. So we see here that the recovery backlog, you can see the wavy lines is basically the seasonal effect. This is over a 10-year period. So we have a seasonal impact. So the wavy line shows that in the backlog increases in the baseline and decreases with balanced investment. And then we have the cumulative. You see that the cumulative is quite high in the baseline case and substantially lower in the balanced investment case. And then the resilience index shows that resilience is growing in the balanced case and declining in the baseline case. Okay, and now the effects of balanced investment is that balanced investment addresses both the causes of damage and the capacity to withstand fires. So fuel load decreases, WUI exposure declines, damage falls substantially, and recovery backlog becomes smaller. So resilience improves gradually. So testing alternative budget priorities. So that was the balanced approach, where we just basically allocated, we had four allocation areas, and we allocated 25% to each. And here we talk about different allocation priorities. So we have the same preparedness budget, but tested under four alternative allocations. So we have a fuel treatment heavy allocation. We have a suppression readiness heavy allocation. We have a WUI risk reduction heavy allocation, and we have a managed fire heavy allocation. And under the current assumptions of the model, fuel treatment produces the largest improvement. So we see here that the recovery backlog is the lowest when we apply the allocation to a fuel treatment heavy allocation, and then we have the cumulative damage. We see that we have a lower cumulative damage with fuel treatment heavy options. And then we have resilience is growing more with the fuel treatment heavy option than with the other options. So the preliminary policy findings are that we use scenarios with the same total budget, and we had equal allocation is not necessarily optimal, and fuel treatment performs best under the current assumptions. The policy implementation mechanisms differ, and the effectiveness parameters remain preliminary. So the results are exploratory, not prescriptive, sorry. And sensitivity testing is required before identifying leverage points. And one thing I'm doing in another project is I'm looking at using a model like this, an exploratory model, and looking at how robust the policies are under deep uncertainty. So I have a technique that I'm developing which handles running a model hundreds of thousands of times with different parameter settings, and then looking at the policies for robustness. And that might be a good way to overcome some of the exploratory aspects of this model and provide more concrete results. Limitations and next steps. Current limitations are that we have limited damage categories, basically just WUI interface, WUI structures. We have fixed preparedness budget. We have a resilience index based primarily on unresolved damage. We have simplified climate effects, and we don't consider human behavior. The next steps are to add climate-driven climate-driven changes in fire risk, to include environmental and social impacts, to represent rebuilding in more detail, and allow for adaptive budget allocation, and conduct sensitivity analysis and uncertainty analysis. So what the model suggests about resilience. Prevention reduces the pressure placed on response and recovery. Response capacity limits losses during fires. Recovery depends on keeping damage manageable, and delays make late interventions less effective. Portfolios should be tested under uncertainty, and the bottom line is that resilience is the capacity to avoid damage, withstand fires, and recover without accumulating an unmanageable backlog. So for discussion, maybe we can talk about, what real decisions could this model support, which assumptions are most uncertain, and you can ask me more about the assumptions. What important feedback is missing? Where could the model produce misleading conclusions? What evidence is required before operational use? So the final thought is wildfire resilience is built before, during, and after a fire, and this model suggests that early prevention may reduce pressure on both response and recovery. Thank you for your attention. Questions and comments?
Let's go back to what parameters or characteristics or performance that you're defining, that you're monitoring for resilience.
Right. Basically, resilience is the accumulated backlog. So basically, when the recovery backlog increases, resilience declines.
Say that again?
When the recovery backlog, that is the damage, accumulates, and then the resilience declines. So basically, it's a very simplified approach to resilience. Basically, it says that we want to clear the recovery backlog before another event occurs.
Okay, so
we want to rebuild. We want to rebuild before there's another event, and that's the resilience.
Okay. I understand. So I'm trying to think about what the actual stock is. So damage, you're saying that damage is a stock?
Yeah, damage is a flow into the stock called recovery backlog. So there's basically a number of structures that are damaged, and that's a stock, and the damage increases the number of structures that are damaged, and then we have recovery by repairing or recovering from that damage, and that's where the stocks and flows come in. So resilience is calculated based on the recovery backlog, where damage increases the backlog, and basically repairs and recoveries reduce the backlog.
I see. So if you're thinking about with all these wildfires we have over here in Ontario, and where I am a little bit getting the effect over here in Minnesota, if you were to think about how to bring this to the people who are on the field, how would you do this? Like from this, because I think we all, the thing I have with stocks and flows is they're very useful tools for getting insights, for understanding the behavior, the dynamics of systems. What I struggle at times is explaining this to managers and technicians and the people who are actually in the field. So what are your thoughts about like how to bring this to actions that that the people in the field will actually do? What would be the actual let's say meaningful message for them?
Yeah, well, definitely it depends on who you're talking to. You know, if you're talking to people who are allocating budgets, I think then really a good way to look at it is with possibly a dashboard where the policymakers can change the parameters in real time and see the results to see, you know, the impact of different parameters on the resilience or the damage. And so I think that would be a good way to operationalize this model. And like I said, it is probably for budget allocation purposes rather than say for firefighters or or people that are, you know, actually responders. Um, I guess there is some aspects of response that might be interesting, but it is a very high level model. It doesn't really go into, for example, strategies for response or detailed work about fuel treatment or managed fires. But it does give you some idea of priorities.
Ivan,
Sure.
uh, kind of interested down here in the States, we've got lots of people telling us about major weather events that are going to happen during the year, like El Nino or El or La Nina, whatever one it is. And now we got a super El Nano something that's coming at us. At any rate, these events apparently can be broken down into direct impacts to the environment. Does your model consider the fact that if, say, the jet streams decide to all go south, or if a different Pacific weather change is predicted, what is it that should do something for their resilience, right? Over.
Yeah, I think the model doesn't really consider climate change or those kind of things you're talking about. The only thing it really considers is seasonal effects.
Uh-huh.
So you have a seasonal change in fire severity, and you have a severity index. So I guess it would be probably a simple change to have a time varying severity index. But right now, the only thing we really consider changing over time is the seasonal effect.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
So Ivan, so as far as, well, at least what I used to know, I don't know what the latest is, but part of forestry management to help reduce the danger of fire was to do controlled burns,
Right.
right? Well, the minute you do controlled burns, you know, that helps because it uses up the fuel on the forest floor,
Right.
right? But,
Right.
and so when you have all these wildfires, not intentionally, well, some of them are intentionally set, apparently, but so it burns up a good bit of the fuel. So in effect, it might be helping the resilience,
Right. Right. Yeah.
right? So the charts don't really tell that story.
Well, I don't know if it completely neglects that. There is an aspect of that in this model here. So we have the fuel load, as you were saying,
Yeah.
and we have fuel treatment, which is maybe clearing the brush and clearing some trees, and then we have the managed fire opportunity there to reduce the fuel load, and of course this I guess the idea is that is the managed fire reduces the fuel load, but maybe what's missing here is the actual fires themselves reducing the fuel load. So I think you have a
Right.
very good thing that you can add to this model. That basically, as you said, a serious fire will reduce the fuel load, and maybe I didn't model that as well as I should have.
Right. And, as far as, I don't think it goes into the botany much in the model, but, oftentimes plants need fire to survive. So it helps biodiversity, right?
Right,
So
right, yeah.
fires are bad. They're particularly bad for me with the wildfire smoke, but and everybody's health. But it certainly does a lot of good as well.
Yeah, I think the issue that I'm looking at is damage to structures in the urban areas.
Right. And the human aspects are not included in this. Have you shared this with the Project Wildfire team?
I haven't shared it with them, but I'm very willing to. I kind of think that this level of aggregation might be too simplistic for them, because
Well, it is, but it may trigger some thinking that they realize something they didn't include, or it.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know, but
I should definitely approach the Project Wildfire people.
or at least
See,
approach one of them and just pass it by them first.
yeah.
Yeah, Ivan, I've got a suggestion, and it's based on a real world situation out here in Colorado. Our fire departments spend a lot of time on mitigation and education. And by that, I mean, I can pick up a phone and within a week, a fireman will come out to my property, do a survey, and tell me how I can mitigate my property against fire.
Right.
And that is an incredibly great leverage of investment, because 1 hour of a fireman's time may get me to invest $1,000 in cleanup and make my property much, much more resistant to damage. So I don't know how you could get that right. That would be the protection of the WUI structures, I guess.
Yeah, that's exactly where it is.
Yeah.
I didn't, in my model, unfortunately, I didn't find that was providing a lot of leverage, possibly because maybe people like you are few and far between. And maybe
So out here, it's very, very common, believe me. And the fire department, I think, takes it very seriously, this mitigation outreach, because that makes it's a good use of their funds. And so your model should represent that if it can.
Yeah, well, it definitely does. It does definitely try to reduce risk of structures in the WUI, and it provides investment to do that. I guess the issue is, maybe my model doesn't give that as much importance as it deserves, and that's where maybe some really good sensitivity analysis and some robustness testing could be very helpful.
Yeah, but this is really good stuff.
Hi, Ivan.
Hi, Chandra.
Hi, Ivan. Just so what John said was great, because my brother lives in Phoenix, in Tucson, Arizona, and there was a wildfire on the mountain just behind him, and he was on tenterhooks whether to leave or not because the wildfires were coming down, and he couldn't get any information from the local Tucson area, Tucson, Arizona. And I was calling him every hour or so. I said, I think you should move. I think you should move right now. And the thing is, he has a lot of saguaro cacti and all that other thing. So I was thinking, this model is really, do you look at it from a different environmental perspective, different areas? I know this is very, very pertinent to Ontario and Canada and Toronto, especially the wildfires right now. But in places like, Tucson, or as John said, Colorado, we have, a rocky landscape interspersed with wildfire, and it's very dry. That's the most important part. So have you got anything here that can change it to the different environmental areas?
Well, yeah, I think so. I think, this model is really not really all that considering Ontario or Canadian issues. It's more, like I said, the impact on the urban, the wildland urban interface. That's where the model is focused, and the damage to structures. And a lot of the Ontario fires are up north, where there's very little in the way of structures, and the real problem there is smoke from the fires, and possibly trying to put them out. But there's no real WUI damage because there's nothing up there. So this is focused on like I said, the wildland urban environment, and yeah, I think definitely this could be
Tailored, right?
Tailored or adapted for various
Right.
environments. Like I said, the assumptions here. These assumptions in terms of scope could change, and maybe they could be made more specific to a particular environment. There's nothing like a geographic information system in this. Maybe that would be a great extension to the model to actually, throw in a geographic information system aspect to it. But right now, this is a very high-level model, and it's just exploratory.
Yeah, sorry, I was late joining. That's why I didn't see this purpose and scope. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, and Eileen has her hand up.
Yeah, I was wondering if there aren't something that exists on risk assessment of forests, monthly risk assessments or something like that, to predict, at least in national forests or more controlled forests, which forests are more likely to be the most costly, for instance.
Yeah, that's very important, and we're planning to write this up as a possible paper for a journal, and I think that would be a big part of the literature review would be to look at what's happening today in risk assessment, and maybe making sure that our model fills a gap in the literature, that maybe we utilize some of that data, and we also build on it to provide more information.
And it should be a more national database or beyond.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Okay, I think Bill Scheibel is next in the queue.
Oh, yeah. Following on to what Chandru said, I think it would help if you had some kind of high-level fuel decision. There's just, if you've ever been in Northern California seeing a wildgrass fire, it's much, much different than a hardwood fire. And down south here, if you see pine trees going up, they're really good at burning. I mean,
yeah.
But, and they're really hard to put out too. So my point is that maybe there's some major classification. I think that would impact the decision processes given the type of fuel load you're trying to deal with. Over. Just a thought.
Yeah. One of the things about system dynamics is that it generally works best with highly aggregated data. And what I think you're all talking about is disaggregating the data by region, by fuel type, and whatnot.
Yep.
And I think that's very possible. And I think what I would probably do, how I would probably handle that for implementation purposes, is what I do is I convert these VenSim models into Excel spreadsheets. And then the Excel spreadsheets have no problems with disaggregation. There's, you can have as many columns and rows as you want to disaggregate to different types of areas, different types of fuels, different types of responses, and all these different things. So I think that that might be an approach that would be very valid to disaggregate and try to be more specific and like Eileen says, use more of the data that's available on specific information for the model.
Yeah, especially if you find that the data isn't there.
Yeah, that's a good point, and that's where the exploratory analysis works. Is basically it shows the importance of some parameters that maybe data is not available, and maybe the importance of getting better data in that area because the model is most sensitive to that data. So yeah, that's where this deep uncertainty it finds a lot of value is because it identifies those kind of leverage points.
Okay, John Jay, I think you're next.
Thank you, Ivan. Very impressive. Thank you for that presentation. I'm just curious about whether you've done any thinking or work on extending the methodology to other critical infrastructures. Of course, I'm interested in hospital resilience and so on. Does it lend itself to easy extension for different adversities other than wildfire and, black sky, for example? And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have a model that I'm writing up right now on hospitals. It's not quite the same as this, but it is an application that we could build on for a resilience model for the black sky events for hospitals. I have another model that hopefully we'll discuss in August on floods. And it has some similarities to this because it talks about avoid, withstand, and recover in a lot of detail. And yeah, I think there's lots of scope for other applications. And
Good.
and I think
Okay.
also too, I think this idea of deep uncertainty is really powerful, and I can apply that to many different cases.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Okay, Eileen.
Yeah, well, John Jay, I think almost any application can be applied to another one if you just let your mind think through it. And oftentimes it's a very powerful way of coming up with solutions you hadn't thought of before or find the missing stuff. So, but I just wanted to relay one of the lessons I learned about fires. It makes a difference what accelerants are also available in a fire, particularly in structures. Because my son discovered that fireworks that happened to hit a bag of rock salt explode into fire, and he tried to burn the house down for a second time. So I wonder how much that actually plays into structural damage, because who knows what other accelerants are there in the houses or structures that you're trying to say.
Yeah, that goes back to John's mitigation ideas, is getting firefighters to look at houses, look at land in the area to try to mitigate the damage before it happens. And going back to John Jay's comment, I think that the overarching model here, and it's that I'm applying over and over again. With the help of John Burtis, is the avoid, withstand, recover paradigm, and basically almost every model that I'm working with now has that kind of shape and structure. Esteban's got his hand up.
So my position with these sort of things is at the end of the day, it has to become something tangible, something that people can take back home and do. So when you mentioned, Ivan, about creating a paper and all this, I would like to know if it's one of those journals that are where the people who are impacted by this, I'm talking about forestry, like a forestry journal, a journal on I don't know, ecology or environmental sciences. Is that one of your target journals? Because that, I think that's where you want to do the impact on the actual people who are living this day by day.
Yeah, yeah. I think we're probably going to focus somewhere maybe in the risk area, and maybe forestry and risk, or forestry and ecology. We haven't picked a journal yet, but we're in the early stages. We basically have a model, and we have an idea of writing a paper. We haven't actually got that far to
Mm,
determine the journal to look
yeah.
for. My strategy, though, I think papers are very important, but I also think presentations are valuable as well. And, and what I try to do is provide my presentations to as many people as are available and interested. And so, I'll record this presentation will be recorded. It'll be posted on my YouTube channel, and I'll advertise it on LinkedIn, and I expect to see some people take an interest in it through that venue. And so, yeah, we'll see who's interested, and maybe how we can move forward as towards a proper application of these kind of
Mm.
things.
I think we as systems engineers tend to speak among ourselves about these sort of things, models and all that. Dr. Alberto Sols from a Spanish university, he mentioned in one of his books that when we publish, we should go beyond what is our own systems engineer community. We should actually go directly to our customer. So if you, Ivan, I'm assuming that your customer for this model is the firefighters, the policy decision makers, the people who need to invest in, in all those sort of things. That's where I would like to go directly to them. That's what I'm saying. I encourage you uh, to reach out to them directly. And that's because that's part of our vision as INCOSE is to, become people who have a global impact. And fires are such a, we all have seen the impacts of fires in the wild, and we even have families who have been impacted by these sort of things, and friends. And I would like to see this to actually get beyond our systems engineering community, actually reach out directly to those folks.
Well,
Yeah, I think the Project Wildfire, you saw in that diagram the amount of stakeholders that they've identified in the Wildfire Project Wildfire, and definitely, yeah, it would be important to try to reach out to those stakeholders and see who might be interested in this model, or if the Project Wildfire people would be interested in this model and extending it towards helping them communicate some of these like priorities and strategies.
and I've got a question for Esteban. You're one of the leaders in the cab. Can you think, are there any people in the cab that we should be talking to about this?
So the way I operate the cab is consumer